a time summary for later discussion, and we ask the public, if you want anything removed for discussion, if you will please ask a board member to remove that item to be discussed. We'd appreciate it. And that's my RR&C. Thank you so much. Now we're ready for public comment. And if you'll come to the podium and tell us who you are, and you're free.
I'm Monty Krigler, I'm from Copper Operas, and I've got some things I want to ask the board that they would do. One of them is about your pay. I would like you to pay $200 a month for all your benefits. It goes up 10% a year, and get rid of the 5% pay raise. This will help the ratepayers out some. Secondary thing is most of the golf courses in this county get free tertiary water. There's only one that pays a little bit. Saddle Creek pays $150 an acre foot, but it costs the water district $400 to make it. I want all the golf courses in the county to start paying their fair share. They need to pay whatever that water costs. This way the ratepayers are not subsidizing golf courses, which use a lot of water. The other thing is the money you give to the schools every year. That's giving public money away, and that needs to stop. A grant, or what I think you call it a scholarship, that's not good. You can't afford it. And that's about all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Peter Riss. I'm from Chenalin. And Madam Chair, I agree with you partially, but for my 2 cents worth, trust and respect people have to earn. Courtesy they get. Trust and respect you have to earn. Along that line, I hopefully that I like to pass this out, because I feel a certain amount of injustice was done to you folks, the board, to the public as a ratepayer, and to Mr. Egerton also. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Ma'am, please. I don't expect a reply right now, and out of courtesy and respect for the office, I have not put it out publicly, that issue, but I will be distribute my concerns and to all interested parties. And so it's basically this organization is countywide. I will be distributing to all publications and individuals and organizations. Thank you.
Further public comment?
Good morning, George Fry. I'd like to bring up the issue that I brought up at the last meeting in terms of procedure. When there's an agenda item and it's brought up, according to the Brown Act, you're required to obviously address the agenda item and then put it out for the public on each agenda item, and not to make a motion or a second prior to putting it out to the public. And the reason for that is so that you get the input from the public first that may have a bearing on the motion and the second. It's done in every arena that I've seen in terms of commissions and boards. So I would bring that forward to you again. Thank you.
Have any other public comment? If not, we'll go on to item number 3, the consent agenda. The following items are expected to be routine, non-controversial. Items will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member may request that any item be removed for later discussion. Item 3A, the approval of minutes for the board meeting of November 12th, 2014. Ratify the claim summary number 514, Secretarial Fund, in the amount of $1,120,966.92 for December 2014.
I request to remove 3A.
3A,
I request 3B removed.
3B. Okay, so we'll go first with,
I just have to abstain,
oh,
so I didn't want to lump them together.
okay,
I wasn't at the meeting.
for the board.
Right, I wasn't at, I can't prove the agenda, the minutes, because I wasn't at the meeting, so.
Minor.
So you just need a, that's my only concern with it.
Okay.
So if somebody wants to make a motion for approval.
I move for acceptance of 3A.
The question that I would have is, the three of us were not seated at the time.
Yeah, I don't know. We talked about that last time. I'm not,
Yeah.
I honestly don't know how that works.
How would we do that, Dave?
I can move, I'll move for acceptance, I'll second it, and then I'll vote on it.
Thank you, Scott, but I think.
Would you like to make public comment also?
Yeah, and no public comment.
Even though we weren't in our position,
We were here.
or we were here, we were present in the audience, if that makes a difference.
It certainly helps. Madam President, I think by necessity, we need to have, obviously, we need to have a majority, at least
votes.
3 that can vote for it. Otherwise, we simply won't be able to adopt the minutes. I know it's less than ideal, but it's kind of where we're at, yeah.
So we will,
So, yes, you would need to have at least 3 of the board members act upon it to.
I would say then, as a member of public, I would second that motion.
so we're removing item 3A from,
No?
No, you've got a motion and a second, so you're going to vote on it now unless there's public comment.
Well, you need public comment.
public comment. Okay,
All those in favor?
Excuse me, first and second was made by whom, President?
And
First and second.
second.
Thank you.
Scott and
Dennis.
Terry.
Dennis.
Dennis. Is that who you are?
Yeah, I'll change.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 I abstain.
Item 3B.
3B, Madam Chairman, I only had a question, maybe this is to staff, on the partial reimbursements item. That's that subsection D, most likely for Jeff, as to what is the percentage of those reimbursements that are showing on the claim summary?
What page is it on?
This would be the second page in on the claim summary. It has to do with a breakdown of the reimbursements other than the expenditures.
Give me a second.
Sure, sure.
Item D, 96,448
Yes,
cents.
yes, yeah. It shows a partial reimbursement, but doesn't say what the percentage is or how much.
That's health insurance. If I'm looking at page number 1,
Right.
9 of the detailed claim summary, down towards the bottom,
It's right in here.
there is a health insurance employee, 1214, 90,148.59. I know that's not the entire amount, some of it's the rest of it. What you see there is for dependents, is the 15% cost share.
Okay,
Between the employees and board members who receive these benefits, for the dependent portion of it, they would pay 15%.
so this is part of the MOU and everything else that
That is
plays in?
correct.
Okay. That's just what I was questioning.
Any other questions regarding the claim summary?
I'll move for acceptance.
I second.
Okay. Jeff and Dennis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Jeff and Dennis. Okay, item number 4, reports. Accept department status reports as follows. Dave, everything.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. I just wanted to walk you through a little bit of the background information on the drought. Obviously, that's one of the biggest issues facing our community, our water agency, and the work that we're doing. Some of this is very familiar to you, but I thought it would be good again to refresh on where we're at today and why this is such a big issue and some of the implications. First of all, just a reminder, we've been in extremely dry conditions in California since 2012. We're now entering into the 4th year of drought. The water year, as measured each year, is October 1 to September 30. And we're coming into, now we're well into the wettest period of the water year for 2015. And we had some promising signs in December, but the weather that we see as of right now gives us great reason to be concerned that we may be in another dry year. And certainly we need something much more than a normal year to get out of the situation that we're in. This is a reminder, some of the big issues, some of the big kind of touchstones, things that have happened in response to drought. The governor declared a declaration of emergency in January of 2014. As part of that, he called for a 20% conservation by California, agencies across California and the communities we serve, and to ask that the local agencies implement their drought contingency plans. We've done that. And you'll hear some of the information on how we're doing on that with Joel in a moment. As well, the State Water Board issued notice of curtailment of all post-1914 water rights in the Sacramento-San Joaquin River watershed, so the entire Delta watershed, and that was in May 2014. That was a set of emergency regulations adopted in conjunction with that as well. Pretty extraordinary actions that were taken by the State Board, recognizing that there wasn't enough flow to support all of the beneficiaries of the river systems and human and environmental, and that they would have to apply some of the cutbacks and curtailments according to the seniority of water rights, and that is, of course, the backbone of our water system, our water rate system in California. There was a temporary lifting of the curtailment in November of this year. That's still in effect. That's to allow us to impound water with the storms that we have experienced, and hopefully we'll experience more in the coming months. Just some background. I hope you can see these numbers. Next time I'll try to make the text a little bigger. I don't know if you can see this from where you're at, but just a background where we are right now as of storage, and these are some of the key storage reservoirs in our county. Some of the really important indicators of where we are. As you can see, we're looking at storage levels, looking at it as far as what is our percentage of total capacity at the reservoir for storage, and then as well, what is our percentage of average for this time of year, and what would be considered a normal year. You can see the numbers give you great reason to be concerned. You look at New Melones, you look at New Hogan, and you're in the range of 39–40%, and this is obviously of great concern. These reservoirs are operated for local and statewide needs. As well, some of the key state and federal reservoirs. These are the backbone storage reservoirs of the state and federal projects, the Central Valley Project, and the State Water Project. And you can see Shasta right now is 66% of average for this time of year. As well, we've got Oroville at about 62% of average, and San Luis Reservoir at 64%. The real challenge, and I'll touch on that in a moment, on some of the differences in storage this year to last, but the real difference, if you look at it from the perspective of water management, what's different this year from last year, the difference is we don't have the same amount of storage in our reservoirs today as we did last year, and really that was what provided us with the flexibility to be able to respond to drought. Clearly, if we continue to go into drought and we don't have that kind of carryover storage, that puts us in a much more difficult situation because we don't have that flexibility to respond, and we have to come up with other solutions. Certainly one of the key factors in our community in Sierra Nevada and the state is what is the condition of our snowpack. It is our largest reservoir throughout the state, and is the water that's stored in the snow. you know, I guess the story to tell here is we're in better shape than we were last year as of this time. You know, we're looking at a snowpack, so the water content of our snowpack that was recently measured by the Department of Water Resources at the state of California shows that our water content is about 50% of average for the end of the year, end of 2014. Last year, it was only 20%. And really, that was the 20% water content and snowpack was really what sparked the response that we saw at the state and the governor's declaration of emergency. Because you know, that really is this is the key factor. If we don't have the stored water in the snowpack that can be released later in late spring, early summer, you know, it puts us in a very, very difficult position. Just within our Central Sierra region, we're looking at about right now about 48% of average. And this number is important. April 1 is what is deemed to be considered the height of snowpack within the Sierra Nevada snowpack, and how DWR calculates in its snow surveys. And so what it'll do is approaching April, it will compare the measurements of snowpack to what we would have in a normal year in April 1. And as you can see right now, we're only 15% of what we would need to have by April 1 to have what would even be considered an average year. The net result of this, and this is, you know, I put a slide up here just to kind of go over a little bit of the background on the state and federal water projects and some of the consequences from last year and what we could be up against this year. The reason this is important to us is because, you know, this really does dictate in many, many ways how the policies come out at a federal and state level. You know, there's so much dependence upon the water delivered from these projects for residential areas of primarily Southern California and Central Valley agriculture, and you know what the condition that these systems and those that are under contract to receive water in these systems, the conditions that they're under have a lot to do with the policies that are ultimately set by the state and feds. So as you can see, there were some pretty terrible numbers last year for these contractors. You know, last year, state water project allocation was only 5% of the $4 million that those that are under contract with for the water project. I think 29 agencies have rights to. This year, we're looking. The initial estimate was 10%. They're making these forecast projections in part because they're doing this for agriculture. There's some state water project has some agricultural customers, as well as Central Valley project is primarily agriculture and the beneficiaries of that project. Agriculturists need to have projections in advance so they can have some ability to try to make plans for what they're going to grow and how much acres they're going to have in production. So these numbers come out as early as they can get them out. On the Central Valley project, the customers last year, you know, you're looking at, it was 0% allocation for the contractors for agriculture south of Delta. This is the reason you continue to see, you know, many of the stories about the suffering in the valley of those that, you know, primarily are employed on farming operations and the widespread unemployment and just some of the real consequences of that. The Bureau of Reclamation has not come out with its initial estimate yet on the GDP that comes out late in February of each year. So in any event, and this last point I think really does go to that storage element. These are the biggest storage reservoirs we have in the state, and of those we're looking at about 2 million acre-feet less of storage than we had the same time last year. So, you know, that definitely gives us big concern at this point. Precipitation outlook, where do we go from here? You know, this is throwing darts really in a lot of ways, but the general consensus right now from the experts, you know, is that because of the fact that we are in the wettest part of the water year season, we do have a prospect that we can see some relief from the drought. You know, but it really is going to come down to what do we have in the way of snowpack, and the moisture content is really going to be the key one. I mean, there's certainly benefits from even rainfall. We see that as providing replenishment to our reservoirs, although as we recently saw with the storms that were, you know, significant storms, we didn't, within our own watershed, particularly Calaveras, most of that ended up being soaked up into the ground because it is so dry. So, you know, prepping the soils for the storms that are coming, again, we very much need those storms to arrive. And so absent something pretty spectacular in the way of snowfall in particular, we're not going to see significant relief from the drought. So on that happy note, that's the end of my presentation. I know this is, in many ways out of our control, but it is a very important factor that we have to consider in our plans and in our efforts as we come into 2015.
Dave, I have a question. If the modeling that I heard from DWR at the Mokwise was probably going to be used to their best advantage, that isn't the only model that's out there. Is there anything that we could be looking at in more of a long-range projection, even for the district, to say this is where it's going to be through, say, 2025 or 2020, that we start to take some proactive measures on our part before it becomes mission critical to take a dire step, so to speak?
Yes, Director Mills, that's a really good point. A lot of the modeling is based on past, is our recorded history of the hydrology of the river systems, and that is the logical basis. That is the data set we use, but that is limited in its applicability. I mean, if we're seeing changes in in climate and what type of precipitation we get, the timing of it. And particularly if we're going to lose the significant amount of snowpack that is projected, we have to do something more in the way of trying to analyze what the impacts are going to be. So you will see a lot of layers that are being applied to the modeling to try to anticipate. Okay, what if we did lose 40-50% of our snowpack? I mean, and that's now in the form of rain as opposed to snow. What does that mean for us? I mean, the real problem is, our system was not built to cope with that, and so. In many ways, we're going to have to reoperate what we have. We're probably going to have to, and I think the state has finally recognized that we're going to have to invest in new storage. Clearly, we don't have enough to capture in wet times the excess supplies that are available. That's a really good point. I think one of the things that we would be best served doing is taking more of a conservative look at what the reliability of our supplies are. I think traditionally most agencies, purveyor side, have looked at water supply reliability in a firm year perspective. So it's I think we need to which assumes dry years, but it assumes a little bit better pace than if we took a safer yield perspective. Really what is, and even that I think we probably need to go beyond, because safe yield, you're looking at your driest year on record. So you looked at 76, 77, and you're trying to and you're saying the reliability is what we could have in a year like that. I think we could be seeing something that could be worse than that, certainly, and coupled with all of the curtailments, the regulatory regime and the implications of that all affects the reliability of supplies as well. I think we've got to look at all of that and say we need to make sure that again, and this really goes to the core of us protecting, preserving, and having access to our water rights. I mean, it really is, what do we really need to provide that safe supply for our residents? And as we can see, there are immediate impacts in the way of well failures and other things that we've got to be ready for. So.
Thank you.
Might I add something? There were a couple of items on the claim summary that I questioned in advance. I didn't wait. We are paying a healthy amount to Ecor Consulting, and they're talking about the water right resources. So, this last month we paid them $16,000 for their services. Another entry that we had in our claim summary was another $14,000 that we're paying to John Mills, who is also looking at our water delivery and looking at all sorts of things. So we are being proactive in a couple of instances, and I just wanted to bring that out.
Yes, and that's a really great point, President Underhill. In fact, yeah, and I would. That's something in the future I'd like to have them come back and give you some of an update on the work that they are doing in that regard. At El Dorado, I saw the work of John Mills on drought for us, and I saw it from a distance. I saw what they were doing for this, what he was doing for this agency. A lot of work was done as the governor was coming up with this emergency declaration and all the things that came out of that, and then subsequently a comprehensive water plan for California, which had a big emphasis on drought. a lot of our what we were able to put in that to influence it from the perspective of the upstream communities, we did through John and his being at the table there and being one of the people that was working directly with the governor's staff and with Aquas. So that's a great point, and I'll put that down as something to do in the future.
What's the, I mean, in regards to reoperating, you know, some of the bigger systems? I know we're working at the federal level to talk about New Melones and that sort of thing. But really, I mean, we've kicked around reoperation of Hogan and reoperation of Melones. But I mean, what's the traction of that? Can we get more traction with that now in this fourth year of drought? Or, I mean, is that something we should be pushing our lobbying efforts toward?
Yes, Director Davis. I mean, that's and I think that's a prime example, New Melones. I mean, if we again, us having access to an immunized municipal industrial supply, and potentially agricultural supply out of New Melones by having some storage there, that could be exactly what. So basically saying, taking what might be released for other purposes, other benefits downstream, or simply just be sent out through the Golden Gate as simply abandoned water. If we had the ability to have that pod as a conservation pool that basically is a safeguard to our community in the driest of times, it's a perfect example of it. Some of the challenges on...
And I just want to make it clear, we're working toward that end right now.
Yes, that is, yeah, exactly. So, the case of drought, the impacts of drought, the potential of what could happen in the future if we have extended droughts, all of those things help us make the case that really this is essential to providing reliable supplies. I mean, that's the whole mantra of the state. That's where we have to position ourselves. Obviously, that's our mission, is to provide a reliable, safe supply for our community. That's what we're going to, and we're not going to back down on that, and this is a very important way to do that. So.
Further questions? Okay, thank you, Dave.
I just think one thing, it's pretty clear that we should probably begin to get the public prepared for similar conditions as far as water uses as we had last year. I just can't see us with what's left in the season. It's just, I mean, we can have some monsoonal stuff, but even that is just going to get us back to square one. And I still think the state is going to be requiring us to be in a drought mode next year, no matter what happens. Because, unless every area fills up, which is not, I just can't see that happening this year. So I just think that we need to begin to talk to people before they start doing their landscaping projects, before nurseries start buying plants. We should just maybe give them a heads up that we should be looking at drought-resistant landscapes and just so we don't have people say, well, we didn't know. I just think it's hard to believe that we're not going to be in that. And again, when we redo our budget, we'll have to be, mindful of the fact that we'll have less revenue because we'll have less water usage. And so we need to be conservative as we were last year, thanks to Jeff and staff. That's a lot of districts haven't thought of that, and then they end up with $1.5 million budget shortfall like Tuolumne County. So.
Along those lines, I clipped out a couple of articles or ads out of the surrounding newspapers to bring them in, and I shared with Joel because, again, the other districts or the other agencies are doing that very same thing, becoming more proactive, and so we don't necessarily have to do the same thing, but let's follow through in our education of the public.
I appreciate those comments. I think that we need to reach out to those communities as well. There's a big difference of just putting a sign up and expecting everyone to read it, and after about the first month the sign's up, they forget where it is. And, I think that we need to get out and have some outreach events, educate them on water conservation opportunities, what we're supporting, and even with the small mutuals and other smaller districts, water districts that we have in this area, we have a great resource in Joel, and I think that if we reach out to those folks too, with possibly coming up with an agreement where we can share some of this water conservation stuff that we've already developed and take it county-wide, I think that I'd really like to see something like that happen.
Okay. Well,
No public comments?
no, these are just partner department reports. Sorry, we'll catch you later. Jeff?
Morning, Madam President, members of the board. First off, I'd like to thank Director Davidson for a perfect segue. We're talking about.
I saw the reporting here, just, I wanted to steal your thunder a little bit.
No, it's a very relevant point, and if you look at your handouts, there's some slides there talking about capital R&R program revenues and stuff. But I'd like to deviate for just a second to carry on the conversation that you just had regarding the drought and reduced water consumption. Because as you're aware, we derive water revenues from base charges plus consumptive charges. And that's a big critical component of our water revenues that help pay for our water operations. After my presentation, Joel's going to come up and talk about conservation and what we've done as a district, and then I'll come back because there's a slide in there that's cost of conservation. But you're right, Director Davidson, less water means less revenue. Now, we did anticipate lower consumptive revenues when we prepared the budget. I looked at reducing our consumptive revenues by 25%. So we are proactive in that regard. But if we have continued conservation requirements and continued drought, we'll have to revisit that. And one of the things we're going to be doing next month is coming back to the Finance Committee and your board with a mid-year review, where we take a look at not only our expenses year to date, but also our revenues year to date. I've got some preliminary numbers, but they haven't been finalized because we're going through that 6-month close process. And for you, those of you who aren't accountants, there's a lot of journal requirements and a lot of balancing that we have to go through before we bring back final numbers. But we will be bringing forth to your board through the Finance Committee and then to the full board a snapshot of where we are right at mid-year, at the end of 6 months, which is December 31st, because our fiscal year runs from July 1 through June 30th. We will also be providing some projections showing where we're a little bit short and maybe we're going to have to shift some funds around. There may be a need for some budget adjustments or some allocation changes, but that is based on what your board desires what to do. I'm not ready to bring those forth. It'll come through the Finance Committee first. The other thing I'm going to be doing is that is basically the kickoff to the fiscal 15-16 budget. We want to understand where we are now, what our challenges are, and how we want to move forward in meeting the district's needs and preparing the budget. And that'll be a process that we'll talk. We won't be doing it at the same meeting. We'll go through and talk about mid-year. We'll go through that process. Once we digest that, then we're going to come back to the Finance Committee and start talking about budget for 15-16, and then bring it back to the full board for some initial discussions where you want to go, how you want to help shape the budget and move forward. But the budget has to be adopted by June 30th of this year. So we're going to go through a very iterative process, making sure everybody knows the different steps along the way, where we are, provide adequate from your board, members of the public, so we really have a solid budget that we can move forward on. So that kind of lays the groundwork for the process moving forward of looking at the budget. What I want to do now, if there's no questions as far as that process is concerned, talk about our capital R&R program again and just kind of bring you up to date as where we are as of December 30th, if that is okay.
Did we hear that the last time, or are you?
I provide monthly updates.
Right.
Yes. Last time we talked about the entire CIP program, so you could see where the different.
Specifically, then you're talking R&R.
That is correct. And so what I'd like to do is what I've done in the past, provide you a summary of the revenues collected, summary of the expenses, and kind of where we are, a snapshot in time. It's a very basic review that I've been providing at prior board meetings every month. and this information is in the packet that you have in front of you, the different slides. The first one I'd like to look at is water. Now, just to kind of recap, and I know I've said this time and time again, but I want to make sure everybody understands, the rate increases that were approved, the increases can only go towards our capital R&R renovation and replacement program for both water and sewer. So only the additional revenues, they can't be used for operations, O&M, they have to go into this program. So we account for them separately. We have a different water fund for R&R and a different wastewater fund for R&R. So the revenues that you see under the column 15, fiscal year 14-15, we've collected about $852,000 in revenues year to date for this program. The expenditure section underneath it shows you our expenditures to date. We're working basically on two big programs right now, Reach 3A, and Charles Palmer, our district engineer, can address the status of those, where we are in more detail than I can. The tank management plan, and there was a little bit of work done this year on the Techite line, and basically a lot of these are in the design phase. So total revenues to date are 852. If we look at last year and this year, because this program was initiated with the increase in revenues, this is September 2013. We've collected roughly 2.4 million in revenues, expended a little over 666,000. So we have a balance of 1.7 million. The question is, what are you doing with this money? If you look at the very next page, which is the projects themselves, this is a listing of the projects. The biggest one we're working on right now is Reach 3A. That's a large project, and again, Charles can discuss that in more detail, but if one understands, it's about a replacement of approximately 18,000 linear feet up in the Arnold area. And that's a significant project. Well, it's right along Highway 4 in that general area. That's a $5 million project. And we did take out a $4 million loan for water. We've had some money here as well, and we're looking to get some grant money and a combination loan grant with USDA. What the project here is, because believe it or not, in that particular section, there are sections that are a disadvantaged community, and USDA can allow us to have some grant money. They do a grant loan component. That money, right now, it's about $1.3 million in grant, 2.7 in loan, plus a $1 million local match. So we are going to be using up this money, and then we also have Reach 1 after that. So these pipeline projects are very expensive, and that's why we've accumulated some money, because it's going to have to be pay-as-you-go. We're not going to be able to take out, we probably won't be able to take out many more loans in this area. So you have to kind of accumulate money on the front end to make the payments on the project at the back end. And we're looking at completing this project, hopefully, this summer's construction season.
Question.
Yes, sir.
So is the reason for replacement because it's outdated, leaking, losing water type thing?
All of the above.
Okay.
And we have had a number of significant breaks over the past several years in that area.
Would this not be a candidate then for some water conservation loans that are out there in the future, or because of where we are with that project right now, that door is shut?
Right now, yes, it's pretty much shut, because Prop 1 obviously is not available to us yet. We need to move forward. We are getting some grant money through USDA, which pays a little over 25% of this. The rest of the programs that we're looking at that could be Prop 84 money, that door is shut on for us at this particular point in time. So we're moving forward with that because we see this as a significant issue. We were hoping to complete it last year, but when we found USDA money available, it extended the construction process. Or I'm sorry, the project timeline.
Thank you, Madam President. If I could just add, Director Strange, that, that's not to say we're not going to go after all of the Prop 1 and 84 that we can get. because obviously we've got a lot of other projects as well. This one is really time sensitive because we do have a failing piece of vital infrastructure, and it's with a 50-year lifespan on this pipe. It's well beyond that, and we're starting to see more frequent failures than we had seen before. This is, this is we know this is a high priority, that we've got to get this under construction this season. Yeah.
Just real quick, if I can, just for a second, I can give you a good description of
Is this the geyser?
what's
A
happening.
visual.
That's happened before.
Summertime?
Yeah, I came down from my cabin last year, and that thing is about, you see it's higher than the trees.
Right. No one in bathing suits out taking advantage of that, huh?
No.
And Director Strange, that was 4th of July weekend.
This 4th of July weekend, they shut the town down.
Beneficial use. Get down.
Free car wash.
Madam Chair, Jeff, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to know, one of the other, in addition to the Finance Committee meeting that Jeff mentioned before, that we would like to hold early in February to work through all of the background information before we get to the mid-year budget update, but a board meeting immediately thereafter, is as well that we would like to have a engineering committee, and I will be talking about that shortly, about setting up the day for that, but to really then dissect these projects, and that's when we're going to go through each one of these, including 3A in detail, and so we could really give you the background and as far as all of the different reasons why these are time-sensitive projects and they were put into this program.
And also, I hope that we take another review, because our former management threw a lot of stuff at our previous board, and, a lot of that we just have to take their word for it. But I'm looking forward to having your eyes on it, these guys' eyes on it, to take a list of that list of projects and really prioritize them and make sure we do have the right financial structure in there, whether it's whether we're collecting too much or too little. I think we just need to know. We have new management, we've got a new board. I really look forward to us taking those item by item, and one, educating the board, but then also having, your eyes on this, having engineering on it. Plus, we seem to be getting pretty successful. We've had some good grant opportunities that may provide a cost savings. If that's the case, we need to take those out of our financial plan, and then see if there's a need for the rest of that, the rate revenue, or maybe there isn't. But that's the kind of review that we're going to have to take, and it's going to have to be a thorough review, so I look forward to having it.
Along the same lines, I also think that another thing that should be, another component might be looked into this year's budget is the opportunity for our consultants that Bertha pointed out, that we're expending the $16,000 and the $14,000. What they're working on is it eventually is possible income, other income to the district, and it's an alternative income from rates. And I don't know if any of that might come into this year's budget, or looking at it. But another opportunity that might take the place of rates, and the rates may not be at the right place with that consideration.
Yes, and Madam Chair, I just add to Director Davidson's point, I had envisioned that this conversation that we start at the engineering committee is going to be something we work through in parallel as we develop the budget coming into next year, and that is to go through, vet these projects, give you, doing it both at a staff level and before the board, to go through the rationale and how we evaluate them, and to show you that really the most time-sensitive, highest priority projects, and the ones with the greatest potential for other sources of funding that we can use is to leverage the money that we're putting into these projects, how that creates a list of projects that this entire board and staff and the public understand and hopefully support. I mean, that would be the goal, and then have that basically blessed by the board as we go into the next fiscal year. So that as we're launching into any new projects, those are projects you're comfortable with, and that these have been studied and they're worthy of the investment.
I would also like to see, as we're looking at each one of these projects for whether they're critical need or not, can they be delayed in hopes of finding additional grant funding or other sources of money, that we're not going full steam ahead, and in essence preparing ourselves for when Prop 1 money becomes available, or other grants. And might be that there's no grant money available this year, but there might be next year. And so we look at the projects in relation to where can we best cite them in relation to the grant money that's available.
Most certainly. And just a little background on myself. My daughter in high school, freshman year of high school in home economics, was talking about that they were telling her how to manage a household budget. And she kind of smiled and came up with a list of words that basically described me as being cheap. And she came up with a half dozen or so. I've been called a parsimonious heathen in prior budget life. So I really look at the bottom line. And Director Strange, one of the things that I want to provide emphasis, is this is in our total project list of things we need to do. There's a number of other projects out there that are very worthy, and we are looking at other financing sources, like the next round 3 of Prop 84 money. We have 2 projects in there that are on the project list in the approved project plan for the MAC region, and that is a backup filter for West Point and a package plant for the Sheep Ranch area. So we're looking for grant money to fund those 100%, because when we can take advantage of the disadvantaged community statuses, we have great opportunities to provide funding for those projects. And sometimes we've been able to get sometimes 100% grant funding. Some of the areas that we want to have projects like Sheep Ranch and the Reach 1, which goes further down the hill for replacement, they're not quite designated disadvantaged community by the census, the 2010 census, so we have to go out and do income surveys, which we will be doing to prove that they are disadvantaged so we can get additional grant funding. And we're going to be working with USDA and other options. So we constantly look for the appropriate funding source and also look at, unfortunately, what strings are attached to those grants. So we are constantly looking at those, and when we look at the different projects, as Dave had mentioned, to prioritize the list, looking at funding opportunities, looking at all the options as to what's the appropriate project and how we plan them out. That'll be all done very shortly here, and again brought to through engineering, through finance, brought to your board, and that will be part of our budget discussion as well.
Yeah, and obviously I'm pretty naive with a lot of these projects and all. My concern is when we go to the larger camera and UMRA and all, and we start partnering with other districts, and the time involved to do that, to then identify projects, prioritize. I mean, come on, where are we? So for me, when their projects are very important for our district, there may be times when we have to go it alone, so to speak. Even though we can engage those groups, if our timeframes are such that it just doesn't work in that kind of environment, then I think we need to be ready to recognize those and again go it alone, so to speak, if we have to, with their blessing possibly. But full-blown iterative process just may not meet our timeline.
And we look at all options, and timing is a critical portion of that. And when I was mentioning the Reach 1 section, that's a go-it-alone project. But we're partnering up with USDA. We've had a real good relationship with them.
We've actually had some really good success working through UMRA, particularly in the West Point area and things like that, where it's just worth it, because, I mean, there's no way that West Point can afford any of the things that we do there on their own. And so we have to look at that too. Where's the revenue source? I mean, we have so many little districts that there's no way they can pay for the improvements that are necessary. And I think we've done a really good job. I think it would be maybe good to recap the last 5 years of the grants that we've got and how they've been used, just so you guys can get an idea of why we do this, why we've been doing these things the way we have. You're talking about that other set of loans. The money we borrow is at 2.5%. That's about as low as it goes. And so I think we've been pretty responsible in at least getting the cheapest money. And the other thing we have to be constantly reminded of is this state is going to go bankrupt. So these grants are not going to last forever. Eventually, people are going to wake up and say, that's it. It isn't going to happen anymore. The public's not going to vote for it because they won't be able to afford it. So we can't plan our lives strictly on grants.
I'd like to make one last comment about the project. I want to make sure that when we well, in my case, relearn about the projects, that they're brought up to date. I would not like to hear about what Arnold looked like for Reach 3A, 20 years ago. What is it now, And I understand, because I was there, I saw the flume.
Yeah.
And thank goodness, because of our field, we got it repaired quickly.
It's important to know, people could
Yeah.
have got killed that day. There were basketball-sized rocks in the road, and motorcycles driving through, getting soaking wet, and I happened to get there right before it happened, and our staff was right on top of it, but traffic was still trying to get through. It was a dangerous situation.
We have to plan when our brakes in the line are going to be, not 4th of July.
I did not cause it, no.
Bring us up to-
Contrary to what Peter says, I did not cause that leak.
Madam President, and that is the plan. As Dave mentioned, it'll be brought up in the engineering committee, reviewing all the projects and their relevancy and their needs, the liabilities associated with not doing the project. And we also discuss that at finance committee. And we'll bring it to the full board as well, for those that aren't on those committees. So there'll be plenty of opportunities. We digressed a little bit, but I think it was a very good conversation, and I'm not trying to get airtime here, so how about if I move on?
Yeah.
This is the same format here for wastewater. Obviously, we don't have as many wastewater customers as we do water customers, 4,800 compared to about 12,800. So the revenues is not going to be as great. But unfortunately, the expenditures aren't as great because of the liability involved with sewer projects and existing facilities and the potential for sewer spills. And Bill and Charles are on top of this. They can talk about the different projects. But just to let you know, let's go to the far right column. To date, since September of 2013, we've collected $900,000 in revenue. As you can see, that's far less than what we collect in water. We've expended $744,000 for projects, and the biggest projects to date have been the Copper Cove Lift Station 22 that we're moving forward on. The contract for that has been approved by the board, and moving forward with that construction. Charles will give you an update on that. And lift stations 9, 10, 11 down in the Poker Flat area, those are completed. And so we've had some loan payments. So if you bottom right-hand corner, we've got a little bit of a deficit in that fund, about $622,000. But we haven't tapped into the loan of $2.3 million yet because we're holding on to that for that station project. And we're going to need the proceeds from that to go into to pay for that project. It is, as you go to the next page, at this particular point in time, a $1.6 million project, so we're going to eat up a significant portion of that, and then once we're completed with that project, we're going to be able to understand what monies we have left for future projects, either lift station upgrades or pipeline replacement or such, and that will come out in the engineering committee.
Which loan was this payment to for $150,000?
That was the loan we took out, the capital R&R loan.
That's
We took it-
6.2.
Yes, the $6.4 million loan.
6.4.
And that's the sewer portion of it. And it was structured where on water, because we have to meet loan covenants and debt ratios, the first few years of the water loan were interest only, and sewer were in principal and interest, and then water and principal and interest will kick in a year or so for the water side.
Jeff, question, that loan is for how long?
7 years.
Jeff, I think you misspoke on the $622,000 deficit. I think you meant
$22.
$22, yeah.
I'm sorry.
So Mike, I was about to have a heart attack here.
I'm sorry, yes, thank you for that clarification.
So the numbers in parentheses are negative.
That is correct. That's accounting needs. Any questions? Thank you for your time, and I look forward to working with the board through the finance committee and such to bring everybody up to speed on these projects and also in the budget process. Thank you.
Good morning. Charles. Charles.
Let me sneak in before you then, Jess, and then you'll be up, okay?
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Good morning, Madam President, members of the board. My name is Joel Metzger, and I'm going to give you a year-end water conservation update for what we've done over the course of the year. And keep in mind that our efforts really began in earnest in the middle of June, and that's when we really pushed the public outreach and initiated stage 3. So this is a graph that gives you an idea of our water production, and this is looking at last year versus this year. So that blue line is below last year throughout the course of the year. So even in January, when we were mainly hearing from the state and not so much pushing it locally, we were already seeing our customers use less, which caused us to produce less. And for a more detailed view, again, in this time, the blue is 2013 and the red is 2014. And in each month, we're doing better. If you look at the green line, that's kind of showing our spikes. Everything is still below what we did last year, but we didn't consistently go down each time. We had, let's say, 22% reduction, and then up to maybe 15 or 12%, and then back into the 20s. And I can't necessarily explain why we had those different spikes. I think what I'm proud of is that we were always reducing our use compared to last year. And so in December, we did go up a little bit more, close to 15% reduction, as opposed to some of those that are up in the 20s and so on and so forth.
Excuse me, Joel.
Yes.
Would that not be reflective of second homeowners? I mean, that's a big part of what we're doing. So that's why, I mean, that's a big, as I say, that's part of the explanation.
Oh, no, absolutely. We have kind of a unique situation where a huge number of our homeowners only spend part of the year here. And so for maybe most of the year, they have close to zero use. And so that does cause some challenges in calculating our average use per day and things like that, because we have that information. So what does this all boil down to? Over the course of the year, this is water production, what comes out of our plant. From 2013 to 2014, we were down as a district by 18.7%. And that's a really significant number. We're getting close to that 20%, which is kind of the key that we're shooting for, and that's many years off. And if we're looking for when we really started going for it with the mandatory conservation, so looking at July through the end of the year, we were at 20% reduction. So I'm really proud of what we're able to do, and I think that those are great numbers. Just to give you kind of a frame of reference, if you look at how we did in previous years, we were kind of in drought, but we weren't doing anything mandatory. In 2012, when compared to 2011, we were up by 7.6%. 2013 compared to 2012, we were up by 14.2%. And then we reduced our use by 18.7 this year. So a huge swing over the course of just last year versus, or 2013 versus 2014. So how do we stack up against other water districts? I thought you might want to have a frame of reference. TUD, just to remind you, had a much more severe situation than we did, and they started with some much more stringent restrictions. They did loosen those later in the year once their situation improved. So from June to November, they reduced by 34%. And the reason I don't have from January through December for all these is because I just used what the agencies were able to give me. And so I tried to qualify what months they were looking at and the trends. Angels, a little bit to the south of us, they were down by 12.3. Amador Water Agency was down by 16%. UPUD was down by 20.8. CPUD was down by 21.79. EID was down by 6%, and then statewide for November alone, 2014 versus 2013 was down by 9.8%. Generally, the Northern California is doing a little better than Southern California in conservation, but in general, everyone is making some effort, and we are down as a state, so it's looking good. We need to do better, though, as Dave mentioned, especially if the drought continues here, and it looks like it's going to. So just to give you one more update on what we're doing to help, oh yeah, Terry.
TUD is who?
Tuolumne Utilities District.
And Joel, are we continuing with our outreach efforts through the wintertime? And if you can include in here before you wrap up, what are we continuing to do and what are we going to do in the next couple of months? And I know it's wintertime, but I think it does need to continue.
Right, so one thing to keep in mind is we're past the main irrigating season, and so we're looking at pretty much, we're getting close to mainly indoor use. With some of these sunny days, people could be watering a little bit, but not very much. So this gives us kind of an idea of what the indoor use only might look like. And tackling outdoor use is a much easier change for people to make than indoor. However, you can make big changes indoor as well with things like yellow is mellow, things like getting a higher efficiency washing machine or dishwasher, changing your shower head out, changing your faucet head out, and things like that. And so we have a conservation rebate program that was put in place a few months ago. That's been offered, and that's kind of what you're seeing here as part of the conservation program. In addition to subsidizing various high-efficient appliances, we also are offering these to our customers for free. And these are a various number of things that just help people be mindful both inside and out. What I have the most of is about 300 of those dye tablets, which is a really easy way to find out if your toilet's leaking. And toilets happen to be the biggest use of indoor water. And if it's leaking, it can really stack up. In fact, I've talked to many of our customers who have had bills they didn't expect, and they ended up finding their toilets were leaking. So these are some of the things I'm doing. I'm also continuing to use social media and the network of other media outlets, more traditional media, to continue getting the message out. We also have all of the information on our website. And my team up front, the customer service team who talks to people, hundreds of